How do you draw the features of the face more accurately? In this video, I would like to share with you a very special exercise that involves drawing a portrait upside down from a reference photo. Once you give this process a try, you'll be able to draw more easily because you'll be learning to draw what you see, not what you think you see. Hello, this is Jack with Let's Draw Today. This video will show you how to draw a portrait upside down. This is an exercise that comes from a very good book from Betty Edwards, and the book is called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. Now, this book is especially helpful if you are a beginner just learning how to draw. The whole idea of the book is it talks about how our brain has two different parts, the left brain and the right brain, and how we can apply that to drawing. This exercise that I want to show you today and the other concepts from this book, it talks about how you can stop using your left brain to focus on logic and identification, and how to go into more of a right brain mode where you are more in the flow of focusing on abstract concepts, spatial concepts, and interacting with the basic elements of art. You'll learn how to draw what you see, not draw what you think you see. And that's a phrase you might have heard a lot from people that give you suggestions as to how you can become a better artist and how you can draw better. What that means is rather than drawing eyes, rather than drawing a nose, rather than drawing a mouth, we'll be drawing lines, we'll be drawing shapes, we'll be drawing form, we'll be drawing value, and we'll even be using space. We'll be using positive space and negative space to guide us. And another benefit of this exercise is it can help you to draw anything better, not just portraits. All right, so with that said, we're going to walk you through how you could do this with this reference photo, which is obviously upside down, an upside down photo of a woman wearing glasses and a hat. And just so you know, this is actually my first time trying this exercise. So I'm excited to see how it comes out. Now, again, the goal of this exercise is not for you to draw a perfect image of what you're trying to replicate, and it's also not just to make things difficult. But the idea is just to help you train your brain so you see the basic elements of art. You're not seeing the things that you commonly identify during a drawing, because if you're trying to draw an eye, you have this concept in your brain of what you think an eye should look like, and that's interfering with what you're actually seeing in the reference photo. So rather than trying to replicate what you see in the photo and fighting with your left brain to replicate what you think you see in your brain, we're going to try to block out the left brain. And we can do that by flipping the photo upside down, because then the left brain has nothing to really focus on because it's not trying so hard to identify what it sees. You're then forced to use your right brain to just focus on those basic elements of line and shape and form to replicate those things instead. And then that's when things all start to come together. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start here. I have an HB pencil, so I could draw relatively light. I'm going to start just at the upper left corner and just kind of work my way down. I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong way to do this or just to start it, but I'm going to go ahead and do it this way. Now, one of the things that you'll want to try to do as you're doing this exercise is you'll want to try to fight the temptation of identifying, or even if you're having an inner dialogue with your brain, you'll want to try to fight the temptation of identifying what you're drawing at the moment. And I might do that throughout the video occasionally as some non-examples of what not to do. But rather than say, oh, right now I'm drawing the edge of a shirt, you should say, oh, I'm drawing a line that curves this way and then jets out like that. Another piece of advice, and you might have already realized this, but the paper that I'm using is the same size as the reference photo. Now, it doesn't have to necessarily be the same size, but I would recommend you at least, if you're doing it in a sketch pad or anything like that, you at least block off a space that is the same dimensions proportionately as your reference photo. So that way you're not fighting with the edges being different on the sides of your drawing space as opposed to the reference photo. Now, at this point, since we're just doing a line drawing, we're mainly focusing on the edges that we see, but you could also focus on the edges of the shadows if you want to, especially if you plan on putting some shading to the drawing later on. And I think I'll go ahead and add some simple shading to this after I finish the outline itself. So I might periodically go ahead and you might see me outline some of the edges of the shadows that I'm seeing as well, like right along here, right along this line. And again, I didn't say right along the edge of this shirt. Now, I do that very often in most of my other videos. You'll see that I'm identifying what I'm drawing at the moment as I'm drawing it, and then, that is just because that's just a simpler way for a lot of people to understand and follow along with me as they're drawing along with a certain tutorial. But again, with this exercise, you want to try to break that habit. And it might be, if you haven't ever done that before, it might be good to try just to see the result that you come out with and see how you're more easily able to train your brain to think in those terms of line and shape and form and shadow, as opposed to, oh, I'm drawing a neck now, or I'm drawing a lip now. Now, all the while we're doing this, we're trying to see how these different elements interact with each other. For instance, this line here that is curving around, I see that there's a little bit of a subtle bump along this edge where it juts out very, very, very subtly, but we see it nonetheless. So we're just focusing on even those tiny little differences that we see. Another thing you can look out for is the relationships between what you already drew and what you're currently drawing. So for instance, this line that I'm drawing now, I want to make a judgment as to how far should I bring this line out? Should I bring it way out here? Should I pull it in a little bit more this way? Or should I come down the middle a little bit? And one thing that can help you make a judgment about that is to look at what you already drew and see how it relates to that. So for instance, if I want to bring this line, if I want to see how far to bring this line, I can look at the reference. And it's kind of hard to see on this reference because the tones are very similar to each other. But we can barely see the edge here. It's almost like an implied edge. But we could compare it with what we see up here. And we see that this line, it starts to taper upward right along where this line ends. And if we were to make a kind of a vertical imaginary line here, that can help us decide where to pull this line inward, so I don't go too far outward with it. So those are other things that this exercise can help you do. It can help you to look for those relationships between the different lines and the shapes that you're drawing and make a determination as to how big or how small or how long or how short a line needs to be or a shape needs to be. All right, so this line, I'm going to look at this edge and the tip of it. It looks like it's aligned where this line meets this edge. So I'm going to make that mental note. See? And here we go. This is kind of like a shape, like a triangle that we see here. Even though there's no actual edge here, I'm using this edge to place where this line, how far down this line should go and where the end of this diagonal line should be. All right, so I'm going to use this, again, another kind of invisible marker here, an invisible line, to help me gauge where to start this line, this edge. And I see that it's aligned right about here with this curve. And I can see here how far this line should come out before it starts to curve. And if I have another little vertical alignment here, it tells me it's right about there. So now here we have some angles that we're trying to replicate, and some shapes, some circles, some circular shapes. All right, so I talked about space, and I mentioned that at the beginning, as well as the line and shape and form and value. You can also use positive and negative space to kind of make judgments as to how things are going. And right now I'm looking at the space here between this curve and the curve that I just drew here, and to me, it looks like there is more space here than what I have here. It looks like I don't have enough space here. So that might be an adjustment I want to make. All right, that does look better, but I think there might be too much and then maybe not enough space here. So I'm going to move this up just a little. Okay, I think I'm a little happier now with the space that I see, the amount of space that I see between this upper curve and this lower curved line compared to how I had it before. And I believe that there's an improvement here between the space between this jagged line and the curved lines below it. So, okay, we'll see. I'm curious to see how this will turn out. I don't know. Again, this is my first time doing this, so, but it'll be interesting. It's definitely an interesting exercise, regardless of the outcome. It definitely opens your eyes to a lot of things. Okay, I'm trying to take note of this curve, this bottom curve, and how it relates to this other curve above it, and I'm just comparing the level of the, or the amount of curve, I should say, that I see in the line, and then when it starts to converge to the line above here. How we see how it starts to get closer and closer, and then we see it gets to comes to a little point, and then it goes towards the big edge here. Right, we see a circle, and the edge, the tip of the circle, it just touches this edge above it. Right, we see the outline of some value, some tones here on just to the right. And I'm just outlining the edges of the tones just to make a shape. All right, so it's coming up very soon. We'll see how to take this from a simple outline to something with value and something with a little more realism. But before that, if you're finding this video to be helpful, please like it and share it and subscribe to the channel, and be sure to click on that notification bell so you don't miss new videos. Also, go ahead and leave a comment. Let me know what you think of this upside down exercise. So have you tried this before? If so, what challenges did you face? Were you surprised by the outcome? And if you haven't tried it before, how do you think this exercise might be good for your drawing progress, or not good if you were to give it a chance? I'd love to know. Okay, let's see. Before we get into the values here, I want to just give it a quick once over and see if I need to make any changes. I'm not totally satisfied with the way this line here at the bottom is shaped, this curve. And if I look here at the reference, I see that the bottom swoop, if you will, if I were to line it up with something else that I already drew here, it would be lined up with this little dip of this edge right here. But here on this side, it's not lined up with that. So I probably need to move this dip over to the left a little bit to kind of remedy that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, and one other tiny observation that I'm noticing is, and I'm not sure how, we'll see what we can do to fix this, but if I want to call this a circle, even though it's not a complete circle, but this circle seems a little bit bigger than this one, whereas these seem more equal. So I don't know. We'll see if we can fix that. On both sides, it's a little wide too. These two lines paired together, a little wider than what we see here. So maybe I'll try to fix that also. Make the space between them a little thinner. Okay, I think I'm liking this better already as far as the space between these lines that run together. they're making the distance between them a little thinner. So I think that's going well for me. Now I need to come back over to this one, this other lens, and do the same thing, but also make it a little bit bigger. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to the shading process and put some values in here. And remember, you can also at this point, if you'd rather just flip it around, not flip your drawing around now and see where things line up and make adjustments, you could do that too before you start shading. And typically when I'm drawing, that's what I like to do. I like to make sure that my line drawing or my contour outline is as good as can be before I start the shading, because it's a little bit harder to fix things when you're putting a lot of values on there. But for the purposes of this exercise, I'm just going to keep it upside down. I'm going to keep the drawing upside down and just continue shading the portrait as it is. I'm going to do some very simple shading here. Nothing too incredibly detailed, but just going to lay down some simple values. And as I do that, it's going to be the same concept. And I'm just looking for a collection of tones, light tones, dark tones, and I'm going to pay attention to the shape that those tones are in, and I'm going to try to replicate those shapes of values. And we see to the lower right of this edge, this is where our values start to get a little darker. And then we also see some of the darker tones coming along this edge, and then this lighter, kind of a lighter strip separating the two darker tones. And you see these subtle little guidelines that I put earlier when I was sketching the contours. And those are just to help me mark where I see these little subtle changes in value. At this point, we're trying to shade around some of these lighter areas, these lighter splotches that we see. Alright, the values are starting to get significantly darker here, so I'm got a 4B for this part of the drawing. Even within this form with all of these darker values, there are some slightly lighter values within it, so that's another thing to kind of be aware of. And we'll try to work our way around some of these lighter forms that we see, some of the lighter shades that we see. Again, kind of shading the negative space around them. And I'm still using a 4B for these darkest tones. You could use it's kind of up to you as to what you want to use. You could use a 6B, or I'm just kind of sticking with HB, 2B, and 4B for the majority of the sketch. And you may notice here that the tones are getting a little lighter, so I'm just sticking with the darkest values for right now. All right, I think that just about does it. I believe we're ready to flip things around. We'll flip our portrait around and see how we did here. Okay, so here we go. All right, not too bad. Not, of course, not perfect, but not too bad for an upside down portrait drawing, especially for my first time, I guess. It looks like we have most of the features in place. It does look like she might be looking a little bit off instead of directly at the camera, but all in all, not too bad. Pretty good. It was a fun exercise. So I think that's it, though. I think we'll say that this is how you can draw a portrait upside down. I hope you're able to give this a try. Remember, you can use this exercise to help you draw portraits or any other subject, and you should see your drawings improve if you do this every once in a while. It's all about training your mind to focus on the fundamentals instead of focusing on your left brain perception and what you think something should look like. So if you'd like to learn more about this upside down drawing exercise and other exercises for learning how to draw, again, I highly recommend checking out that book, The Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. There is a link in the description below where you can get this book. It is an affiliate link, so if you buy from the link, I will get a tiny commission and no extra charge to you. So anyway, I hope you were able to learn something from this video. If you enjoyed the lesson, click on the screen right now for more drawing lessons from Let's Draw Today. As always, thank you so much for joining me and for drawing with me today.